The voice we have in our head is what we call the ego, and we let this voice guide us in order to live that ego, and that's literally impossible. So the fulfillment of the ego, welcoming it and being it completely, is what finally transcends our ego. Almost nobody is realizing that the voice we use to give meaning to everything doesn't exist at all. So we surrender ourselves to that power, to that awareness, to that voice, expecting that that voice leads us to peace or happiness, when that voice actually is the absence of peace and happiness, is pure fear. So the moment that I can face my self-image, I can see through that image, because that image doesn't exist. It's a thought that I'm thinking. In the moment that I think something alone, I mean that my self-image is not shared with you or with a plant or with a tree or with a galaxy. In the moment I'm thinking something personal, that outcome, that thought, doesn't exist at all. And that's what the ego is. It's a personal thought. It's a self-perspective. That's why it doesn't exist at all. The meaning we give to the word ignore nowadays means to reject. And I'm not saying that we have to reject that voice, because that voice is the outcome of the rejection in itself. Otherwise, we continue with the same perspective that the ego is giving us. Ego is rejection, so if we reject the ego, we are feeding, we are nurturing our ego. There is another perspective, and that perspective is to welcome our ego completely and to be that ego completely. Because when I can be my ego completely, I can see my ego completely. And when I see my ego completely, then I can see that that ego doesn't exist, doesn't serve me in reality. So when I accept my ego, I'm using a way of being completely opposite to the ego. That allows me to see how my ego vanished itself. The first thing we have to realize is that we don't know how to do that. And we have to assume that. When we realize that we don't know how to make that decision from that new perspective, we feel uncomfortable. And in that place is where we really embody the teaching, is when we really walk the teaching. Because our life is always trying to show us that the way we live is not the way life is in itself. So, what you are saying actually is that you are facing your ignorance. So look how beautiful is that. At the moment that you see an increase of awareness, you are more aware of your ignorance. And in the moment that you are more aware of your awareness and your consciousness, you feel happy and you feel peace for that. And at the same time, you are feeling that kind of what is going on? How can I express that new thing in my little thing, in my daily life? And we don't know. So that's a period of time when we can discover our inner silence, and to see how silence can teach us how we can make decisions now in this new perspective, because we are honest with ourselves and we see that we don't know. This, let me say, this we don't knownness, it's a great place in our life, and we are avoiding all the time this we don't knownness because we're trying to feel certainty. We are trying to feel certain that we know perfectly well how to do that, which is the meaning of that, what is going on, which is going to be the outcome of that decision that I'm going to make. And there's something beyond that, and we call that presence. So we become learners of our own presence, and that's beautiful. We being aware of our ignorance, we being aware of our ignorance, start learning directly from our awareness instead of our self-perspective. That self-perspective that we have been using to protect ourselves from ourselves. So when I hear what you're expressing, I feel peace and I feel gratefulness because of the beauty of the process of somebody that finally is being aware of his, or in your case, of your ignorance. But that's beautiful to face that question, because that question is going to arise in our mind no matter what. The how. When that question arises in my mind, how can I, the first thing I can see again is that behind that question there is ignorance. I'm questioning how to do that because I don't know how to do that. So I can sit on my ignorance and to let the question go and to see what is the question giving me, because it's giving me a place of awareness once again. And then I can see that what I am living now, right here, is the how itself. But because I'm rejecting it, I can't see that this is the way I get to be fully happy. So when I face that invitation, I can see that I am always in front of that possibility. But the only thing I need to do is, instead of wondering how, is to open my mind to really live that situation and to let that situation transform me, touch me. It's a matter of trust, finally, of trusting your life and trusting yourself beyond what you see of yourself. It's just about trust, finally. And not a personal trust, but trust in itself. And then you see that everything is perfectly orchestrated, and that there is a universal awareness in which you are completely included. So you are choosing between fear and fulfillment. But something that surprises me or amazed me is that the old way of thinking that we are so used to fears that possibility of fulfillment, because fulfillment is something beyond thought, and we are so used and so attached to our thoughts that we think we're gonna get lost. And here trust arises again. So, and honesty too, like being completely ignorant and to learn from the situation itself, to allow the situation teach us how to live the situation instead of trying to give meaning or trying to get something back from the situation, trying to achieve something from that situation. There is nothing to achieve. There is no goal in that situation but the situation in itself. And we are already in that goal. We are living on it. And when you realize that, there is a peace that takes the situation. It's like you stop trying to control your life. It's beautiful.